right, Ray. We've got a first timer to the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast,
Yes.
and that is Gary Lawless, an insider with the Vegas Golden Knights. But insider doesn't tell the full story, does it? I mean, this guy writes, he does radio, he's on multiple panels, he's shaking hands, he's kissing babies, he's scouting. I mean, Lawless is kind of one-stop shopping when you think of the Vegas Golden Knights, isn't he, Ray?
He is, and we ran into him through the Western Conference Final. And Gary, we spent a lot of time in that media room waiting for people to say something interesting. And it gets less and less as the playoffs go on, doesn't it?
It's been fascinating to kind of watch each coach that Vegas has. We get Bruce Cassidy every day, and we're really quite spoiled because he's kind of an open book. But Rick Bowness, obviously, his comments at the end of the Winnipeg series were fantastic, explosive. Jay Woodcroft, he played a little bit of a Mike Babcock game, I guess, is kind of how I would sum that one up. And Pete DeBoer, Pete was really pushing the pressures now on Vegas at the end of that series, and the players in the Golden Knights room who had Pete as a coach were quick to remind me after hearing some of Pete's comments that, hey, Gary, Pete's a lawyer. So it's and now we get Paul Maurice, who's as good as they get in the media center room. So it's that part of the game is a lot of fun as you go through the playoffs.
Hey, Gary, tell us about when you moved to Vegas. Everything's completely new. The owner says, we're going to win a Stanley Cup. I forget the exact number of years he said right out of the gate. He was right on it, wasn't it? Here he is, year 6, and, they're right at it. Like, everything seemed to be so fast forward and aggressive and fit the Vegas market. Like, when you moved there, did you really know what you were getting into?
No, and I will tell you this, that the first year that we were here, my wife and daughter and I, we kind of thought, well, when I worked for TSN or for other entities, I'd have to cover playoff hockey regardless of, because I didn't work for a team. So, the season wasn't over until it was over. Now we were looking at, well, we're going to be done the first week in April. So let's go to Europe. Let's plan a trip. And the team went on the road in early December, and it was the Father's trip, and they won in Nashville in overtime on the Friday night, and they won again on the Saturday night, and they were first in the division, right near the top of the conference. Marc-Andre Fleury had missed 6 weeks, and he showed up on that trip, sort of, his presence announced that he was back. I got home at 3 a.m. from Dallas. We flew home after the game, and my wife, that we had our big dog who's Scout, she's gone now. She woke up and came to the front door, and that woke my wife up. And my wife came to the front door, and I had my luggage there, and I stood there and I said, we're not going to Italy. We're going to the playoffs. And that it's been every year but one. And here we are, second Stanley Cup already. Kelly McCrimmon and George McPhee, they did so well in that first expansion draft. And not just them, Von Karpen, Jim McKenzie, Bobby Lowe's, all these great hockey people that they hired. They did so well in that expansion draft. And then they were standing there like they'd been to the Stanley Cup. Well, Bill Foley didn't want to hear anything about draft and develop then. He wanted to hear about how we're getting better. And they added Max Pacioretty, he's gone now. They added Mark Stone, Alex Pietrangelo, and then last year, the big piece, Jack Eichel. Like you say, fast forward, think about that kind of player acquisition. And I'm not mentioning the Chandler Stevensons and the Alec Martinez and the Nick Waz, all these other guys that Zach Whitecloud, who they signed in college free agency, all these other guys. But like those big names, they've been the most aggressive organization in the NHL. I don't think you can argue that.
Do you foresee a time? I mean, look, there's always a cycle of life, right, in the National Hockey League. And as good as some of these great teams have been, the Tampa Bay Lightning, all that, go down the list. There comes a point where you have to embrace a retool. Use one of the R words, right? Retool, renovation. I don't think that Vegas is going to be a team in the future, near future anyway, that's going to have to go through a full-scale renovation / rebuild. But inevitably, you do have to go through some periods. How far away is that, Gary? And when Vegas gets there, because of their smarts and their aggressive nature, is this going to be one of those let's transition on the fly and just keep, plugging the holes and doing great scouting and good hockey work and making sure that the pieces that we're bringing in are going to get bigger opportunity and perhaps develop as we've seen to this point with some of these guys?
Yeah, well, I would go down the middle of the ice. Eichel is in his mid-20s. Carlson is just getting to 30. Stevenson is in his 20s. Waugh is in his 20s. So, to me, that the window right now is at least 5 years before, because they could retool. Pietrangelo is playing really good hockey. Theodore isn't 30 yet. They've got a bunch of guys. They got Daniil Miromanov. I'm going to miss someone. Daniil Chayka, Caden Korzak. All these guys are NHL ready, and they're playing in the American League. So that's on the blue line. So I think they've got really good cap certainty right now. They don't have any stress at all. They went through that when they grabbed Pietrangelo and then got Eichel. They added a $9 and a $10 million player. And so there was some stress for a while, but that's alleviated now. And at some point, the cap's going to go up. And knowing Bill Foley and George and Kelly, if they have cap space, this is the phrase you hear all the time: cap space is perishable. Mm-hmm. Like if you don't use it, it's gone. And nothing expires in the fridge around here. I can tell you that.
When I'm doing that series, I think what jumped at me was when Vegas is at the top of their game, like they were in game 1, where the game was close and went to overtime, but it really never felt close. Game 3 and game 6, they were a steamroller. Yeah. Like when they get rolling, is that what it looks like? Is that why they're able to have 5 goalies in a year and still be in the Stanley Cup final? Because, I watched them for 10 days, but you watch them all year. Is that what their A game looks like?
So game 5 versus Winnipeg, they drove that game drove the coach to after the game calling his team's effort disgusting.
Yeah.
Games 5 and 6, Leon Draisaitl didn't get a sniff in those 2 games. The only guy who was still getting chances was Connor McDavid. And they got to the point in that game where Cassidy would put William Karlsson on the ice and Jay Woodcroft would pull Connor McDavid off the ice. That was a bogey. But and then in game 6 against Dallas, they didn't have a chance, Ray. That game was over. That game was over during the national anthem. I rewatched it last night, and I'm standing there, and you and Sean, your partner Sean McDonough, are doing a fantastic job painting the picture. Now, at that point in time, I have the luxury of hindsight, but I'm thinking that fourth line's out there. We're about to see one of the best shifts of the year, and they don't score, and then they're going to get another shift in about 2.5 minutes, and they're going to blow. Ray, you said after the third goal, you used the word shocking. You said in a shock, I forget the exact phrase, but shocking was what you said. Pete DeBoer called it a perfect game. He said they played a perfect game. They went to a place that we couldn't go to. Pete was real classy in his remarks too. Then said, if we can't win, I hope they win. I'm not sure his buddy Paul Maurice will be too happy about that. Right. But that's they just when they get going like that, the puck management was perfect. The reload and the back pressure from the forwards to prevent Dallas from having any space. They just squeezed them in the neutral zone, and then the breakouts, they were just so fast. They got the puck and they made that first decision. If the hard one was there, they took it. If it was the easy one, they took it. They didn't think about it. It was just who's open, boom, make that pass. and it was we called the game on radio, Dan Duma and I, my partner, and like if Dallas could have scored late in the first, like to get it to 3-1, it might have been something different. But after the first 20, that game was over.
Gary, I remember having a conversation with Kelly McCrimmon at the general managers meetings, and Kelly was very very good with his time with a few of the media scrags that were hanging about after one of the meetings, and we got talking about Mark Stone. And at that point, I mean, Kelly was being abundantly honest and maybe stating the obvious at that stage, just saying, we have no idea when this guy is going to be available, right? He's like, we just don't know. But he goes, I'll tell you this, he's the heart and soul of our team. In many respects, Mark Stone is the heart and soul. So if he's back and ready for the playoffs, that's going to be a huge boost. So take us back to late January when Stone has the back surgery. They projected at that point that he would have a full recovery. But how incredible to you has it been to not only see Mark Stone come back onto the ice, but we've also seen some evidence that this is a warrior type return, right? He's not in perfect health by any stretch of the imagination. And there probably was a point where he wasn't sure he was going to be able to come back this year.
Yeah, so I've known Mark since he was a teenager. I was working in Winnipeg, and he was a young guy on the hockey scene there. And he has defied the odds forever, right? Ray covered him at the World Juniors, and like you look at him and you're like, well, this guy can't skate, and there he is.
He can't skate. He can't shoot. He looks like an unmade bed, and the guy is like, I love how disheveled Gary he looks all the time.
Gosher
his hair's all over. His gloves are falling off. He drops his stick. Guy's a phenomenal player.
Gosher calls him the Larry Bird of hockey, right? Like can't jump, can't run, and then there you go. At the end of the night, he's got 30, and he's getting on the Celtics plane with a Bud Light in his hand and 2 points, right? I didn't think Mark was coming back. Because my big thing for him was I knew that his wife was pregnant. I'm like, is this guy going to be able to, enjoy his life? He's just about to start that next phase that, the three of us have been lucky enough to do. And we all know it's the best phase, the being a parent. Is he going to be able to hold his kid? Is he going to be able to lift him up and all those things? And then we started to hear that, Bruce started to say publicly, Mark's on pace. Mark's, he's got certain benchmarks he has to hit, and so far he's hit them. And Ray's been watching down from ice level. This isn't 100% Mark Stone.
No,
and there is some real labor. A lot of people wouldn't be playing. A lot of people would be afraid that I'm going to do something here again to my back. And I just hope that, after the season is over, that he can have an off season and rebuild and get back to where he once was. But that's a question mark. And I will say this, if Mark Stone didn't come back, you guys are talking to Daryl Ray right now. You're not talking to me like that, Vegas, or you're talking to, Louis DeBrusque. Like Vegas doesn't get to this point if they don't have Mark Stone.
I think that's a fair point. All right, buddy. Well, one thing that could soothe Mark Stone's pain, obviously, is lifting that Stanley Cup. He'll have plenty of strength and energy to do that. But there's a long road to go down against a real good team out of the East in the Florida Panthers. Gary, we could talk for an hour, but we've taken up enough of your time. We appreciate it. Enjoy the final series, the Stanley Cup Championship, and we'll check back with you again in the future. I
got a little sunburn yesterday, so I'll be waiting.
Be careful.
I'll be waiting for that Ray and Dregs hat because, I need a hat, guys. So just make sure it gets here, all right?
Dregs has got it right there, the new one, Batano on the side. That's the one.
Beautiful.
Other side, Dregs. There you go.
Thanks, Gary.
Have fun, Gary.
All right. Thanks, guys.